call me. I have views, very strong views. I'm not afraid to put them out there because it's not a beauty contest. I always say it's not a beauty contest, so I'm not looking for likes. But in 2019, we were able to give a substantial salary increase. And in fact, when people say you don't do anything for them, I think it's a bandwagon, number one. Buxton, Bedford Wacton, and the West Bobis, the West Ithaca. And people say we're racist because it's 4 black communities without knowing that before that project you had 14. And you know what the government did? As soon as the government came in, they shut the project down. For example, that we tried to revive village agriculture in the African communities, and then somebody went out in one of those newspapers and claimed, oh, we were racist, without even understanding that all we were doing is following what the Ramattar government did. In the same project, by the same donors, CARICOM Development Fund, the Ramattar government had taken a loan, 10, 12 million US, I mean, in fact, about 13 or 14 million US, to do agriculture in 5 predominantly Indian areas.
Well, now I pray for this world to be a better place. Living in love, one people, one race. Stop all your killing, all your bloodshedding. Accept love, my brothers and sisters, cause in this world of hate, there is poverty, shame, and disgrace. There'll be no more existence of the human race if we don't cool down our haste. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hello and welcome to Context. On Context today, we have with us former Minister of Finance in the Guyana government under the APNUAFC coalition, Winston Jordan. And Mr. Jordan, welcome to Context, sir.
Thank you very much, Enrico. Happy New Year to you, since it's the first time I'm speaking to you, and same to the viewership.
Thank you for joining us. And I'm Enrico Wilford. And of course, we discuss on Context matters regarding anything really, but particularly national issues. And we try to put those things in context. As I was coming on the air, there was a report coming out of the Office of the President that the census data is out, at least the census report. Now, you worked at the Ministry of Finance for years, and I think you guys have some kind of, if I can say that, control, or if not administrative control over the census figures and compilation. How is that done? Put that in context for me.
Well, first of all, Enrico, we guys, and I'm speaking about the coalition, had no control over the figures whatsoever. I tell you what, sometimes people don't realize the vast difference between, say, the coalition and any other government, any other non-PNC government. But let's deal with the coalition itself. The mandate that we were given as ministers is policy and ensuring the execution of policy, never to get involved in the day-to-day operations of the ministry or the department or so on. In fact, President Granger caused to be recirculated a circular that was put out by President Desmond Hoyt back in early 90s, I believe, pertaining to the role of prominent secretaries and heads of department and so on, and their relationship to their ministers, and admonishing any prominent secretary to do things that the minister may have asked them to do, which was not in keeping with the law, or which smelt, and so on. And if they were continuously being forced to do that, then they must ask the minister to put it in writing, and so on. And so that is the direction in which many of us went. Okay? And I could tell you that caused a real stir in many of the places because they were accustomed to the minister or upper chicks from the PPP telling them, guiding them, talking on behalf of their ministries and so on. That was not what we were about. So Lennox Benjamin, who was the chief statistician, and his board, they had complete carte blanche in doing the work, doing a professional job, organizing it, getting out into the fields, collecting the information, assessing, collating, and everything else, and producing the report. The only time I had an interaction with Lennox Benjamin is when he was about to hand over the report to me, or to follow up where he was in terms of finishing the report, but never to get involved in the operations of Stats Bureau itself. So that was a major difference. The report that is coming out today, after a long time and after a lot of public displeasure over its absence, is still a preliminary report. It's not the final report. So it's a preliminary report, long overdue, and in some cases, contrary to, as far as I'm concerned, census, because the census is is counting people at a particular point in time. So you have what is called census day. That's when they go out in the fields and they go and they count. Okay? Now, large places like, say, Trinidad, Inyo, and so on, may have more than one census day. You can understand the complication. But generally, census day is a day, maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days for far-flung areas and so on. My understanding is that these people were counting long after the so-called census day. Okay? So the extent to which those numbers are accurate, they will have to come out and explain what they were doing, still registering people long after census day. You understand? But I haven't seen the report, but it is welcome. It is finally here. And hopefully we will have a lot to say once we see the numbers and question the numbers, because there are a lot of unease about why the census had been delayed, especially until after the elections of September last year.
Now, what I have in my hand, Mr. Jordan, is a document that was obtained by journalists, as usual. And if you notice, this document has the PPP's logo on it. It has the president and the vice president on it, and it speaks to Population Report 2023 for Guyana in analysis through building footprint examination. And it speaks to the fact that 948,627 people exist in the country. If this document that was used for the PPP election campaign matches the census document, what do you make of the use of incumbency and the whole idea of transparency and accountability, where a political party uses information from the government even before the government puts that information out?
Incumbency has always had its advantages and will continue to have its advantage, notwithstanding whatever laws we put in and so on. But at least when we do put in the laws, we will understand the limitations, and any going beyond those limitations can incur moves to the court and so on. As it stands today, there are no laws, and so it's a free-for-all. I mean, when you look at the United States, for example, Mr. Trump, even if he's going to a rally, a political rally, he will still use Air Force One because he's still the president, even if he's going to a political rally. He's still the president. It's very difficult to shape a contestant in the election who is also president. He still has to have the security guards, the thing, and so on, right? You can't lessen it, because then you will put his whole safety and the whole presidency in thing. So those are those kinds of perks that we will understand. But when it goes down to ministers, when ministers are going to open a regular health center down in the interior, regular health center, but then mobilizes party supporters to come there in red shorts and black trousers or skirts or whatever the case may be. When those people are fed using states' money, when they have been brought there, either using states' money directly or indirectly through the use of some department or regional department, so on, vehicles, mopeds, whatever the case may be, then that is an abuse. Then that is blurring the line. And in fact, it goes many cases beyond blurring the line. And that is why, even before the EEC put in their report, I had two of my podcasts that I will normally do Thursdays on CAMS TV, in which I questioned this whole thing, in which I looked at Canada, Australia, and so on, who have these limitations. As soon as you declare elections, there are certain things that kick in. Mind you, none of them says that there is any law or anything. There are conventions and so on. But in hard-areas place like in Guyana and so on, you have to have a law, because conventions don't work. You know, people say England don't have a constitution, and I don't think they've put in any constitution of late. They don't have a constitution, but they're guided by a set of laws and mores and so on which pass through the years, and they become like laws, and they absorb that, and the courts absorb that. We here have to have a constitution, and even then, it being the highest law in the land, is still observed in many areas in the breach. You know, so we will have to get laws put in place to even out the playing field, so to speak, to talk about what will happen, how, say, 6 months before elections are due. And there's another story. This business of the Constitution given an extra 3 months after the time. In fact, it's more than 3 months, because it's 3 months after Parliament would have reconvened. So that is why you're hearing the PPP talking about elections not in 2030, but 2031. Because they have up to 3 months after the Parliament was convened to hold these elections. So we have to look at all those things. Guyana is now a part of the growing family, global family, whereas before it was merely a backwater. But now it's part of that growing family. And it has to begin to observe the norms and the mores and so on that family is accustomed to. So we'll have to put in place laws. We're not going to depend anymore on traditions and conventions, and especially in a bifurcated society or a mixed society as we have with our checkered history. We'll have to put in laws in place that will guide us in relation to many things: use of state materials, investments 6 months into election, what can be done, the media, all these different things we'll have to put in to make certain that we even out the field and give some kind of, if it's not equality, then equity to the opposition, known and the unknown, those parties who will be joining the fray as elections are called.
Mr. Jordan, you also worked, as I said, as the finance minister, but you worked in the budget office for several years.
20 years, yes.
How many years?
Many. I set up the budget office. I was transferred from the State Planning Secretariat in 1985, June, to go to Ministry of Finance to establish the Office of the Budget. Prior to that, budgeting arrangements were all over the place. You know, piece was done by Bank of Guyana, piece done by Ministry of Finance, piece done by State Planning Secretariat, piece done by Guy Stack, remember the Guyana State Corporation, yes. All over the place. So eventually they decided to centralize. One recommendations coming out of one of the reports is that these activities should centralize. And I was having some issues with Mr. Asdin Paris at the time, so they decided to transfer me to the Ministry of Finance to go and establish the budget office. So I did, and I became the first director of that that office. Yes.
And you and 2 years later you left Barra Jagdew.
Well, no, this was 85. This was 85, right?
That's why I said 2 years later, Jagdew was there in 87, wasn't he? Or 89?
I don't know when he went to I don't know when
State planning.
State planning, but by then the chairman of the board was Kenneth King. I don't think he saw Mando Haslin Paris. To be very frank, I don't think he would have last one day. Ando Haslin fried bigger fish than him.
So you guys go back a long way, so I can understand sometimes the back and forth that happens. But the question I wanted to ask Winston is that development or planning is part of a continuum, isn't it? So when you see Aishalton airstrip going down or Paramakatoy, it didn't start yesterday. How does that system work, and what? Give us an idea of how it works. Put that in context for us.
Well, definitely. I mean, one of the issues you have about planning, which was very much in vogue post-World War II, when those economies were in shambles and so on, and then heightened after the decolonization period, when former colonies were becoming independent and trying to stand on their own 2 feet. Planning was in vogue. Not much resources, and whatever resources that existed in these societies, lots of it was owned by the mother country or the colonials who thing. So you had to involve yourself in deep planning, and it worked in many areas. In Inyo, it worked. And I think Inyo still has a planning office, very advanced planning office up to today. Some of the other countries also. I think Ghana still has a planning commission, and so on. The problem came about, and by the way, even mixed economies like France, they also did a lot of planning, kind of capitalist planning, if you want to call it, because planning generally associated with socialist, communist countries, and that's how they were divided in terms of the blocks, the planning block and the marketing block and so on. But France, England, and all them involved in some level of mixed planning. The problem came as soon as a number of these countries discovered some set of resources that could propel the country. In Nigeria, it was oil. Ghana had lots of gold, right? And so on. And then they seemed to abandon planning. At the very time when planning was needed even more. Having a great abundance of resources doesn't preclude planning. It requires a greater urgency for planning, and especially when in almost every case, the resource was one that was finite. Okay? And so you come back to Guyana now. Indeed, the Linden to Mabura Road is not a road that was started under the PPP. Without taking any kudos, myself and David Patterson were two of the key ministers in the Granger government who did the spade work to get that project off the ground and to find the resources for it at a time when even the then opposition leader had told the British that it wasn't a priority for them, and were they to win the election, they would not go ahead with that. In which case the British tell them, okay, fine, but you will not have these grant resources, roughly about 60 million US dollars available to the government. And that's how they went through with the project. But indeed, the Linden Mabura Road is the project under the coalition. The Letem International Airport was a project conceptualized, had the studies done under the coalition government. And all of these solar projects that you see, that they're going to open in Kumu and Mokomoko and all of them are projects under the coalition government. Now, I'm not saying that is a bad thing. The bad thing is that they don't reference the fact that these projects were from the coalition government. But the reality is, projects of that nature have planning phases, gestation phases, finding the money for them, understanding where the opportunity is right, and then starting them. That is the plus side of it. The horrible side of it, as you've seen today, is that you can't get from the government, with all this money that's available to them, a scenario that you will know where Guyana will be, say in the transportation sector, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Every day you wake up, and as the president goes to open something, because it seems as if there's nobody else, he goes to open from a fall coop to whatever, he's given another disclosure of something to come. We don't know it. That's not planning. That's not planning. That is an absurd use of resources, fortunate resources that have come to you. And they may not like the vlogger who came here and, the British vlogger and so on, but one of several important points he made, he said construction is all over the place and it is not sustainable. I don't know whether he was talking sustainable in the sense that it was crappy, the work that was being done is crappy and so on. But I could tell you sustainable in the sense of maintenance. Every building that they put down there, they have to get maybe 5 to 10% maintenance every year. You know our record of maintenance in this country. On Saturday, I passed Diamond Hospital. I was going to my doctor. I passed Diamond Hospital, not a Diamond Hospital. I passed it on my way to my doctor. And already, you're seeing signs of decay. But they're not going to look at it because it's a new infrastructure. And governments don't look at maintenance. They like to cut ribbons. In the literature, they call them the sexy projects. You don't go and cut a ribbon for maintenance of a project. You cut ribbons for new shiny things. So last year, you cut every ribbon and you force everybody to finish these 6 regional hospitals because you have to go and tell people that you have 6 regional hospitals, plus the one that you didn't cut a ribbon for and you hide away because that was the black sheep. But that was the major hospital down in Ogle there, the Women's and Children's Hospital, that you gave to the Austrian company, not by procurement or anything, you gave them by just identifying and giving them. And you still had to go out and find the money to give to this Austrian person that never bid for this product. You hand it over to them. But they didn't tell you anything about that. And they got all the major hospitals that are being built. The best hospital is being built over, right? So you got all these hospitals there. You can't manage hospitals the way the hospitals must be managed. You got all these shiny new equipment in there, but you don't have people to manage them. You don't have the electricity for them to be stabilized. And worst of all, the people in those catchment areas don't trust you. So you got people who come in from, say, the East Coast, bypassing your brand new shiny Enmore Hospital and still clogging up Georgetown. That is not planning. And you know what's the horrible thing too, thing? Is that this same PPP, not this government, but the PPP had gone this way before. They had gone to Trinidad, saw the regional hospitals there, liked the idea, and they brought it here in the 1990s, I think early 2000s. So you had a regional hospital somewhere around that Enmore area. You had one somewhere in Diamond area and so on. And they all failed. They failed. But they didn't learn anything. They went back again. Because now you got your own money, you got bigger money. And you see this all the time. It's a colossal waste of money. It's not moving our progress needle. And progress here is measured not only in terms of quantity, but quality. It's the quality part that we're not getting. You got lots of these things, but the quality part.
Where I was going is the young voter is looking at things happening, money making, money moving around. So who the hell cares about proper planning and maintenance and how the house can look 5 years from now? It's the sexy things that people are concerned about, aren't they?
But that's what I said. You don't cut ribbons for maintenance. You cut ribbons for the sexy things, the sexy projects. A 12-story building, they're gonna cut one soon for the new headquarters of the police. Now, 12 stories built largely on mud soil because they might have driven piles and so on. But in a country with electricity that is in a country that water can't even reach your force floor and so on. These are challenges. And then where are you going to be parking in that area? And then where's the zoning you talk about? You put in a police in a historical place like Brick Dam. It was there before green, but once it burned down, it was an opportune time to move it into a more, central place rather than crowded Brick Dam. But you have done worse. You had a 2-story building before. Now you're going with a 12-story concrete building. Do you know what it is to maintain a 12-story building, say in Guyana? Do you have the fire equipment to reach a 12-story building if the fire? Do you have people who can quickly extricate you from an elevator? If you are in the elevator, you get stuck between the 6th and the 7th floors. Do you have all of that in place? But you see, a 12-story building is a sexy project. And they're waiting with bated breath, chomping at the bit to go and cut a ribbon to open it. These soft things, if you want to call them soft things, that go into making that whole project a qualitative example of what the people can expect, did not consider it. Who wants to know whether you got a fire service that can reach, if you have a fire, God forbid, up there? Who wants to know whether you got the fire engine or with the relevant equipment? And who's inspired, even if you tell them, yes, we have it, when they look at the ordinary fire and they see more water spilling out from the hoses. In this big day, more water is coming out of these derelict hoses than can reach the fire, and so on. Yes, indeed. But the young people, it's the miseducation of the young people. It's not only about the 10, 15, 40 subjects that they could get and so on. It's how to apply that knowledge that they are given. That is where that is lacking. Because as you agree, the society has become more transactional. It's not to say money is a bad thing, but compare when we grew up to how these people are growing up. They're growing up with money in front of them. We grew up understanding money as a means of different things. Now, I'm not bashing either generations, but I'm saying if those basics are not inculcated into our young, we are going to fast see this windfall that came to us at the most opportune of times dissipate. And all the talk that we say, well, we can learn from Nigeria, we can learn from Venezuela, and we can learn from all these other people who had this windfall. And today, look where they are. Look where we are. We still got 58% poverty. 5 years after, 6 years, 5 years after force oil, $8 billion US, liquid cash that has passed through our hands, through the NRF. billions more as a result of the investments that have come to our country in related oil fields and in the other sectors, and you're still counting 58% poverty. We ain't getting it right.
And that is assuming that the figures that we began with are correct from the census. 948,000, I think it says, 627 people in the country. So 58% of that is a large number, isn't it?
It is indeed a large number. It is indeed a large number. But when you look and see the obstacles to greater distribution of the wealth that is being generated in this country, you could understand and appreciate. People talk about pockets of poverty. We don't have pockets of poverty. We have considerable poverty in this country. Telling people that you give out 50,000 house lots, they don't mean anything. House lots are not houses. Of those 50,000, maybe 20,000 have been able to build a house. Of those 20,000 that have been able to build houses, how many of those houses count as low-income houses? And what is low income? What is low income? You know and I know that if you went to the bank today and asked for a $5 million loan, it probably will build you a full coop. It probably will build you a full coop. I know somebody who's very close to me got a loan for 20-something million and struggling to get it's a basic house. It's a basic house. This country, even though it might be as Germany prior to the Second World War, the great inflationary period, you have to get a lot of money up front and get two of those massive, we call them, the containers. And you go and you shop and you buy everything right now. Because if you make the mistake, not even a mistake, if you make this genuine planning mistake of buying 10 sacks of cement now and buying 10 sacks of cement next week, price change. Not in your field. And this is what is happening. Labor. If somebody comes and they build you a couple bricks and they did your roof and so on, you got to make certain you hold them down because they disappear. You have to get somebody new. All this pretense that the government is trying to tell us about, the poverty is not 58, but they can't give you a number. It's not 58, they can't give a number. But the reality out there, is that a lot of their measures, genuine as they are, people-centered and people-focused, not meeting the people who count.
I can hear, Winston, people in the background saying, I'm watching this program, but you were in office and in power. Your party was in office and in power. Why don't you shut your, you know what? Y'all didn't do nothing for we. I've heard that.
Yes, I've heard it too.
So how do you respond to that criticism?
Absolutely. In the first place, I can get like Cherry Jagan here. We were in office, but not in power. And
how come?
Well, we got office in May of 2015, and we soon found out who controlled the levers of power, who had the economic actors on their side. I'll never forget, I went to the 2017 budget, and I think I went to one of those private sector organizations and thinking, and one of those well-known private sector persons say, okay, Minister, you've talked about this. Now give us back what you took away. And I think soon thereafterwards, the Private Sector Commission came out with a very horrible statement against the coalition government and President Granger. And I do remember Dominic Gaskin, the Minister of Commerce, Business at the time, putting out a statement refuting the president and chastising them for the insult. You know, so we didn't control the economic power. So we had to massage that. That's number one. Number two, the coalition, the no confidence motion came 2018. And that would be 1.5 years before we actually came out of power on the 2nd of August. So essentially, when people say you had 5 years, we had 5 years because when a no confidence motion comes, is while everything doesn't come to a standstill, there are lots of things you can't do. And there's a lot of things that the international community don't respond to. I never forget in the COVID, can you remember this? In the COVID, while assistance was being given by the World Bank to various countries, they never extended any to Guyana. I wrote letters. I have the letters right there in my account right now. They never responded. We weren't getting any assistance from the World Bank. And then finally, I turned up to my office one day and I see they were going to give us some 100,000, some grant or something. But people were getting millions. We weren't getting because of the situation that we had. So there are a number of things that don't happen. The plus was that we had a budget that was passed. And, you know, it's a good thing that both myself and President Granger were at one in terms of getting the budget out before the fiscal year started. So the 2019 budget was passed in 2018 December, I think 2 or 3 days before the no confidence motion. Had we not had that budget in place, we would have been restricted, our expenditure would have been severely restricted as it was in 2020 because we had no budget in place in 2020. No budget in place in 2020. But in 2019, we were able to give a substantial salary increase. And in fact, when people say you don't do anything for them, I think it's a bandwagon, number one. And number two, it's a reflection of the very insipid public relations that we had. I speak about this all the time. I mean, some of my colleagues may not like it. But we did so many things, but we were too proud or we took them for granted, the stuff that we did. Do you know, for example, in that 3.5 years, we gave the greatest salary increase for any similar period? The greatest salary increase for any similar period we gave. People say it didn't do anything for them. But do you know public service employment went up by about nearly 20-something%? Do you know that? When I gave those numbers, people were shocked. Do you know, for example, that we tried to revive village agriculture in the African communities? And then somebody went out in one of those newspapers and claimed, oh, we were racist, without even understanding that all we were doing is following what the Ramattar government did. In the same project, by the same donors, CARICOM Development Fund, the Ramattar government had taken a loan, 10, 12 million US, I mean, in fact, about 13 or 14 million US, to do agriculture in 5 predominantly Indian areas. Hubu, Purika, Unvawak, 5 predominantly Indian areas. The project was a success. And when I came into power, they approached me, the CARICOM Development Fund approached me for phase 2, a phase 2 of this project. And I tell them it's not going to happen. I said it's not going to happen. I said, our government says, if there's something to share, it has to be shared as much as possible, as broadly as possible. And so we're not going to be looking at the phase 2. If we look at the phase 2, it's not going to be phase 2 of a phase 1 project. It's going to be identifying 5 new areas or thereabouts for it to spread around. And that's how we had the RAID project, Regional Agricultural Infrastructure Development Project, that identified Moko, Buxton, Bedford-Wacton, and the West Bobis, the West Ithaca. And people say we're racist because it's 4 black communities, without knowing that before that project you had 14. And you know what the government did? As soon as the government came in, they shut the project down. People say, so what you were saying, I've heard it. I've heard it a lot. People know in a complex oil industry, when we came in, we didn't have the benefit of experience and all this kind of story. And we had to, and remember, they were telling us that force oil would have been somewhere around 2020, sometime late in 2020. But in the event, force oil came December of 2019. And we were able to put in place several pieces of infrastructure. You know, people think that these things don't count, but we put in place several pieces of infrastructure, including one of the most comprehensive Natural Resource Fund Act that you could get. But what? People allow the government to come in and persuade them that this act is too complicated, it this, it that, and they excise all of the oversight parts, all of the accountability parts, and replace it by what you have today. And now they're coming back praising the coalition government for the 2018 Act, the 2019 Act, that they themselves helped the government to excise and put in what they have today, so that the government now drawing down nearly 90% of the proceeds of the Natural Resource Fund, leaving us with nothing for intergenerational. Nothing.
And aren't you very concerned about that?
Extremely. Extremely. I have the podcast, people who be on my query. I've talked about this from since 2021. From since 2021, because the government was getting away with the proverbial murder. Proverbial murder. The government said when we came in, the treasury broke, how we had an overdraft, massive overdraft, and so on, right? Then I got one of my colleagues to ask the question in Parliament, what was the size of the overdraft at August the 2nd? And what was the size of the overdraft at December 31st, 2020? Forced to answer the question. The size of the overdraft when they came in was 78 billion, something, right? 78 billion. Okay? Don't forget, this is the overdraft that accumulated over 5 years. Over 5 years. This overdraft now had ballooned to nearly 130 billion by December of 2020. So the difference there is how much? 78, 22, let me say 50 billion. In 3 months, September, October, in 4 months, let's call it 5 months, because August the 2nd. In 5 months, they had added $50 billion more to the overdraft in 5 months. In 5 years, the overdraft for us was 78 billion. And by the time the Minister of Finance cleared that overdraft by the benches in June of 2021, it had gone up to 200 billion. These things lie. They don't, I mean, look, listen, maybe it's a few say, man, them figures and things, they may do nothing for we still. Name the things we did for them. I could sit here and you will have to get several programs for me to enunciate in all different areas the things that we did. And one of the best that we did, of course, is that the people who are saying that, if they are of a certain age, they didn't realize that in terms of security, they're alive. They are alive and living today and able to criticize the government. In a previous period, they would have been dead, or they couldn't be on the road after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. and all these kinds of stuff. All of that had disappeared. The country was breathing. We had cleaned up Georgetown, the mess in Georgetown. We had a massive exercise, clean up Georgetown. This nonsense every minute they're running, picking up soldiers and everybody to go and pick up, thing and so on. We had cleaned Georgetown. Georgetown looked clean, was smelling clean, was breathing. But all of these things people take for granted. We had in 2019, I think it was, we had finally brought back a version of national service. It wasn't called national service. I think it was called youth something, right? In the public service, we had opened that public service school, and so on. So when people say we didn't do nothing, number one, we didn't have the resources that they have today. And when we went after people, not the small man, the people who owed us billions and billions and billions of dollars. They're all talking about them same people there today who a lot of people running behind and sorry and sympathizing for them and all kind of story.
I'm talking with Winston Jordan. We are going to be back in just a moment. We are back with Winston Jordan on Capital News Context. You were talking just a moment ago, Winston, about the gold amnesty and things that you tried to recover. And I hear about these 200 taxes and so on.
Yes.
Continue.
Yes. So when we gave the gold amnesty in 2018, at the request of the gold people, the Gold and Diamond Miners Association, we said, listen, man, we're not giving gold sector alone amnesty. We had already said, if we have something to share, we must share it all around. So we decided to give the amnesty to everybody, every sector, individual, and so on. If you declared your true taxes, you will not have to pay penalties or accumulated interest and so on. At the end of that exercise, we had collected $12 billion in back taxes. $9 billion came from the gold sector. And I don't want to talk about our good friends who are in some trouble today because, right? But 9 billion of that 12 came from the gold sector. And we know that wasn't all, but you figure it out for yourself. You're talking here today, you see the minister sharing out goodies in the form of cash grant for the umpteenth time to the fishing sector. Umpteenth time, okay? And again, the umpteenth time also to the rice sector. You see, I speak these things because I don't have to go and, play up to people. I'm not a politician anymore. So I speak these things because they hurt me a lot. You know why they hurt me? You ask every one of those fishermen, how many have ever filed taxes? How many have ever filed taxes? So you're turning around and giving a cash grant to people, most of whom have never even filed taxes. So it's other people's money that you're paying. But you get a sympathy because these are poor fishermen. If a fisherman is poor, he will die soon. But when you go and check a number of them, they have big fancy houses. Big fancy houses. The same thing comes down with the rice farmer. Oh, the rice farmer got to get up 5 o'clock and so on. Every labor is a labor of love, and you have to love it. But it doesn't deny that you must pay your taxes. It is not. If the taxes are too high, we must reduce the taxes. But we mustn't find a reason why we must shut our eye to people who aren't paying taxes. Then we turn around and take the Treasury's money, and Treasury money is taxes being paid by other people. You know who? The public servants in particular. All those whose monies taxes get taken out even before they get their money. And you pay to people who you can't find an income tax return.
But while you're looking at it that way, there are others who look at it from the point of view, the reason you're in government is either to enrich yourself or to win the next election cycle. While you sounding like a Sunday school boy there, saying you got to give give God his tithes and an offering.
But on the other hand, spare thought for the public servants then. Because they are a very large, in fact, they are a larger constituency than the rice farmers. In terms of numbers, they're not talking in terms of what they do and so on. In terms of rice farmers, they're a larger constituency. How are you going to pay? Public servant salaries are paid from taxes. So if people are not paying taxes, then it's illusionary to think that they're going to get a proper salary increase. What do you think the PPP government, in all their lifestyle prior to today, have only raised these people's salaries by 5%? That's all they could afford because heavy leakage in the tax system. Heavy leakages. You can't run a country on this, on where the bulk of the people. Because you see what is happening. You can't get a decent salary to the North's gone. You can't get a decent salary to the doctor's gone, or the ones who stay. You have to turn a blind eye to their private practice. Or you can't do them much. Have you ever seen a doctor being, in United States, you see they have powerful medical associations, powerful lawyers associations, and so on. And the Bar Association in the United States have enormous powers and what they could do to a lawyer and so on. They don't do this and that. The Medical Association, nobody wants to run afoul in the United States of the Medical Association. They have massive insurance you got to pay for malpractice and all this. You think those things are here? But yet you say how America got the best. America got the best because the people are satisfied. The people who perform these services are satisfied, and they will get in the resort so they could do all these fancy, modern, advanced things with robots and all these kind of story. Right now, I'm looking at a Netflix thing called The Good Doctor, and I'm seeing some fantastic things they're doing there with modern medicine and modern equipment and all these kind of things. When are we going to reach that stage? We don't have the doctors who are motivated, and we don't have the kind of salary scale or salary income that will attract doctors with that level of skill to come here. So when you hear what I said? I said, listen, we have to put in place a decent tax system that is not onerous and so on. But at the same time, we have to have the level of enforcement in place. So because once the tax base is broadened and so on, everybody will benefit. Then they don't have to go begging the politician for a little ease and a little thing and so on. In the upcoming budget, the private sector commission, it was made public. When they asked the private sector, what will you be asking the government for? The first thing they said is concessions. Now, since I know the private sector before, every year they ask for tax concession. Every year. I once was in a meeting back in the 80s with a certain private sector company. And the minister at that time was Carl Greenidge. They were asking the government to remove the consumption tax on a certain good. Well, I used to be a customs officer. And I immediately blurted out, but wait a minute, that thing has zero consumption tax on it. So what is it that you're asking? He was stunned. I mean, that is the level to which some of these things go.
But isn't it two different ideologies here, Winston? Where people may see you from the school of tax and spend, and the other side may see creating economic activity, and money is flowing within the system, whether or not we get it from the tax net.
Well, Enrico, then let's go to United States, the great, powerful United States. Why do you think United States have this heavy thing on taxation? You can't get citizenship unless part of it is that you have to show how many years that you file your taxes. Isn't that so?
Yes.
You have to. As a permanent rep, you better file your tax every year. Because cheating the taxes in the United States has heavy penalty. Why do you think they go down that road? Taxes is the lifeblood of every single government. The monies we are getting from oil, that now accounting for about nearly 50% of the government's budget, is a no-no. The monies we're getting from oil, we should treat as a windfall. again, as I said, those monies doesn't preclude planning. You have to plan even more. Because this windfall is just what it says, a windfall. It's going to come and then it's gone. Just like sugar. We didn't learn the thing from sugar. When sugar gave us that massive increase in 1974, and economists tell Barnum that sugar prices are here to stay. High sugar prices are here to stay. And just maybe, on that advice, he went on a spending splurge. National Service, Road, Mazruni Road, Umda, the hydropower project, all these different things he went to. You know what happened the next year? In 1 year, Guyana moved from a surplus on the balance of payment to a massive negative. By 1978, we are approaching the fund for standby credit that we never got.
And Nauru made the same mistake with his phosphates, eh?
Yes.
So the challenge is
Ghana is the most recent example.
Yeah.
Ghana was the poster boy for the IMF a couple of years back. Poster boy. They even went, and God forbid we didn't, although a certain person in the cabinet wanted us to go that route. They borrowed against future income. And then the bottom fell out to the prices. Ghana now, but oil producing country in the throes of the IMF. But there, people will tell you in Ghana right now, Nigeria, IMF doesn't even want to speak to Nigeria. If you don't, as I said, this windfall is not an occasion for you to go splurging and spending. It is not. And this is the unfortunate thing that we're doing here, is the spending. I just want to give one more quick example. They're starving, say, the city council. They are doing projects within the city council's domain, with or without the permission of the city council. And while they're starving the city council, they're doing this project and cutting the ribbons within the city council's domain. Who is going to be responsible for maintaining that infrastructure once they leave and move on to the next place? Every road that they do in Georgetown, that is the purview of the city council, and then hand it over to the city council. How will the city council maintain it? They're hamstringing the revenue base of the city council by not giving. I don't know why I have to get the minister's permission anyhow at a city council to raise my taxes, or to raise whatever it is, revenue raising measures and so on. That's an archaic thing I hope they will get rid of soon and give the independence to the city council. After a while, you got represented on this council, and if you don't like the taxes or so on, you could think, we must not make taxes into a bad thing. What we have to do is have a tax regime that achieves all the things that you said. Investment, rewards effort, directs people in certain areas that would ordinarily not get investment, like in the hinterland, the rural areas, and so on. But we mustn't give the tax system a bad name, especially if you are in a job situation where they take out the taxes before you could even get your money. Or you can go to a certain place and they ask you, with VAT or without VAT. You must have system in place, okay? And that is what we were trending to, reducing the taxes. Look what's happening today. The corporation tax that is in place is as a result of the coalition government. What you're seeing in place today is a result of the coalition government.
I can't let you leave this discussion on context with Winston Jordan on the Capital News platforms without looking at a recent controversial issue regarding the minister responsible for tourism, industry, and commerce. And that minister seems to be very industrious and interested in commerce. What are the conditions under which ministers should operate, particularly in terms of gifts and how transactions are made in their private capacity and what have you. Because the minister at one stage says, you know, I come from money. I was probably, my family has businesses and what have you. How do you deal with an issue like that, Mr. Jordan?
Well, first of all, you know, we don't have a shortage of laws in this country. We have a shortage of implementation. And depending on whoever is the individual, it may be even a question of interpretation also. You feel if this scenario or situation with the minister that you talk about, and by the way, it's unfortunate that Horace is the only one that's been highlighted. You know, in the early days of this government, in its earlier days, there are a number of other ministers' names who have been called. So it's a whole nest. It's a whole nest. It's not just that individual. But coming back to there's the Integrity Commission Act that allows all this to take place. Now, one of the problems the commission has is that it will claim it doesn't have the muscle to do the investigation and so on. But it doesn't preclude them from doing the investigation. It doesn't. I mean, the thing that is in the papers right now, it doesn't preclude them from hiring whoever they want, giving the body to where they get, to look at this particular example to see whether it has validity or not. But as to whether they are independent or not is another story. You know, I see people calling them all kinds of names and so on. But the reality is the Integrity Commission has never investigated, as far as as I understand. They've never investigated. Take all of these submissions that you have to do every year, and I don't know whether they file it or whatever. I saw Terence Campbell insinuating that more than the commission sees this information and pass it on, because he says certain information that he had filed came back to him from a certain person, and he knew it had to come from the Integrity Commission. No, I haven't heard them coming out and defending themselves where that matter is concerned. That's first or second or third time. But I think, for example, before you get into the position, or within X number of days of you getting the position, you must file a declaration as to the assets at the time when you come in. That doesn't happen. You're filing 1 year after. So there's nothing for the commission to compare what you had before you got in here and what it is that you're filing as the years go by. There's not comparison. And the commission is too much into form and very little into substance. You know.
But come on, the commission has been there for a while, even while you were the Minister of Finance.
And we did some changes. In fact, what they're operating under right now is the changes made by us, especially when it comes to gifts and the code of conduct and all that. I think, as I said to you, the laws or the regulations, they are there. As to whether the commission, which is an independent, autonomous, constitutional body, as to whether they're doing their functions, is a different matter. It's a different matter. If we can't go and tell the Integrity Commission how to do, once the body is consecrated, established, and so on, it is for them. It is for them to do it, to go and do their job. So I'm saying to you, I don't know that much more needs to be done in the commission, maybe to strengthen the enforcement aspect of it and so on. But still, even with what they have, what justification the commission has for never, ever, ever, ever being able to produce a report showing that, for example, they picked these 4 persons as samples and they did a thorough investigation, and here are some of the results that they come out with. Nothing. It's like, say, the Auditor General, right? He does a forensic, pick something and he does a forensic audit of it. No, he can't do forensic audit of every single thing, but same thing in the Integrity Commission. You know, they got some poverty-stricken people like me. I mean, people pass my house every other day and say, "Oh, wait, that's where the minister, that's where the former minister live in." And I mean, it's not an old house, but it's one of them South Rhineville jointed up house I live in. I still live in here. I mean, I must ask the particular lady. I mean, I study business, economics, all these different things. I must ask her whether she did advance these subjects and so on, that she's been able to get, this kind of wealth in this short space of time. I am much older than her. I worked in far better, far more income, far higher income positions than her. And yet I was never able to acquire those level of assets, over time. But as I said, she perhaps have a magic formula, which I think she should write the book, and which Harvard and these places might be interested in. She might be onto a good thing. Like I said, I struggled all them years, and I was never able to get anything as such. As I said, I still live in a giant house that I bought in 1985. I still live in here. I comfortable with this little flood and everything and so on. But as everybody is there, everybody to their thing. But just to be, I was being facetious, as you know. But to come back, there's no sense hollering for more laws, more draconian this and more draconian. If the ones that you have, you're not implementing. You're not implementing. Every minute we put in more laws and more laws and more laws on the books. But we're not implementing, or we use the law to either batter or ram somebody, your opponents, and for cuddle, your proponents. And so for me,
Winston, we've got to leave it there. We've been speaking for almost an hour on the whole idea of finance and accountability and transparency and so on in government. I want to thank you so much for coming on, because I think you brought a different view as to how governance should be structured in societies like Guyana. Any parting shots you want to leave with us?
Yes, Enrico, thanks for inviting me. It's my first context. I'm relaxed these days, relaxed in the sense that I don't have to go to work, so you could always call me. I have views, very strong views. I'm not afraid to put them out there, because it's not a beauty contest. I always say it's not a beauty contest, so I'm not looking for likes. I think these views need to get out there, and rather than bashing, I think we need to have serious discussion. That's part of the problem we have in this country. We don't have serious discussions. As soon as you try to get a serious discussion, it is shut down by either a sycophant of the government or some other such thing. So we are being bereft of ideas. We don't understand how to flesh out some of these things. And whatever we're doing, therefore, is suboptimal. A lot of what we're doing is suboptimal. We're not getting the benefit of optimal solutions. So I hope we could have more of these kinds of discussions more often. And maybe one day soon, the government may see the error of its ways and include more of what is called the civil society and the opposition in the decision making of this country.
Thank you very much, and I think that's a good idea to end the program. Some good thoughts. Thanks again, Winston Jordan, former finance minister in Guyana, and thank you for joining us on Context on the Capital News platforms and the Ravel Network. I'm Enrico Wolford. Thank you for joining us. Have a pleasant rest of the day.